In the Realms of Mediumship by Chico Francisco Candido Xavier and inspired by the Spirit Andre Luis. Chapter 16, The Mediumistic Mandate. It was almost 8 p.m. when we stopped in front of an austere-looking building surrounded by several vehicles. A lot of people were coming and going. A large number of discarnates were gathered both inside and outside the structure. Guards from our plane flanked the building, attentively preventing the entry of impenitent or mocking spirits. Various groups of people went inside, but once in the lobby, they were separated from certain spirits that were accompanying them. These spirits were not merely curious or suffering, but blasphemers and obstinate in evil. These cases were an exception, however, because most of the group of discarnate brothers and sisters was composed of afflicted and sick spirits in as much need of fraternal help as the ill and distressed patients they were accompanying. We went in. A large table in the center of the spacious room was surrounded by a large, luminous, insulating band. A large area was reserved around the table to accommodate those in need of assistance, whether incarnate or not. This area, too, was protected by bands of magnetic defense under the watchful care of guards from our sphere of action. In front of and opposite the entrance, several spirit benefactors were conferring with one another, and nearby, a respectable-looking woman was listening attentively to various patients. The woman was enveloped in a broad aura of opalescent light, and in spite of the projections of dark substances directed at her through the requisitions of the sufferers she was assisting, her aura remained unaffected, with the noxious fluids unable to penetrate it. The assistant informed us, "This is our sister Ambrosina, who for over 20 years has sought to offer her best to Christian mediumship. Out of love for our ideals, she has renounced the simplest joys of the world, including the broader comforts of a home. Ever since her younger years, she has been working without the solace of marriage." Ambrosina's face looked frail and wrinkled, but it reflected the peace that vibrated within her. On her head, amid her graying hair, a small cone of light rested like a delicate adornment. Intrigued, we asked Aulus about it, and he explained without hesitation. "That is an ultra-sensitive magnetic device through which the medium is in constant contact with the spirit responsible for the spiritual work she is doing. Because of the time she has dedicated to the cause of the good, and because of her many sacrifices, Ambrosina received a mediumistic service mandate from the higher spheres, thereby meriting the responsibility of a closer association with the instructor who presides over her tasks. She has become so well known that she is overwhelmed by all sorts of requests. By inspiring hope and faith in all who approach her ministry of fraternity and understanding, she is naturally beset by the most disconcerting pleas." "So, she is overburdened by petitions and requests?" asked Hilario, unavoidably curious. "To a certain point, yes, since she symbolizes a bridge between two worlds. However, with evangelical patience, she knows how to help others help themselves, because it would be impossible for her to solve all the problems she is confronted with." We approached the respectable and modest medium, and we could see that she was pensive, in spite of the loud voices around her. Nearby, the combined thoughts of two persons exteriorized the lamentable senses of a crime they had committed. Donna Ambrosina tuned into them and thought and spoke without words, in sentences that only we could hear. "Dear spirit friends, what to do? I am aware of our delinquent brother's crime. A man was murdered, and I can see his agony portrayed in their memories. What are these fugitives of earthly justice looking for in our midst?" We could see that the medium was fearful of losing her vibratory harmony. She didn't want to be absorbed by any worries about the two visitors. One of the mentors present approached and set her at ease. "Ambrosina, don't fear. Be calm. We must not let affliction trouble us. You must see our unfortunate brothers as creatures worthy of pity. Remember that we are here to assist, and that the remedy was not created for the healthy. Be compassionate, sustaining your own balance. We are debtors of love and respect towards one another, and the greater our misfortune, the greater the assistance we need. We must welcome our brothers compromised by evil as patients in need of our care." The medium settled down. she began conversing naturally with the frequenters of the place. Here, someone wanted help for a tormented heart or for help on behalf of unfortunate family members. There, pleas for fraternal aid on behalf of patients in despair. Yonder, other assistance requests. Donna Ambrosina would console and promise help, stating that once Gabriel, her spirit guide, arrived, the matter would be presented to him. Certainly, he would know how to proceed. A few moments later, Gabriel, the lead mentor of the center, entered the room followed by a large group of friends. Conversing warmly, they gathered at the table. There, these spirits of a nobler mental life naturally established a broad band of light that was inaccessible to the darkness that enveloped most of the incarnates and discarnates at the large gathering. Gabriel and his assistants greeted us benevolently. It seemed that we were taking part in a dazzling festivity. Such was the joy of the spirit instructors and spirit workers of that institution. Caring for the sick and the suffering of the two realms did not rob them of their hope, peace, and optimism. Accompanying the selfless and enlightened Gabriel, who merited Aulus's highest demonstrations of respect, were discarnate doctors, teachers, nurses, and auxiliaries ready to serve in the harvest field of the good. They radiated such beauty and joy that Ilario, as dazzled as I was, returned to the questions that characterized his youthful temperament. Considering the messages of light and sympathy they were projecting, might they be high ambassadors of divine providence? Did they perchance live among the saints? Might they be in personal communication with Christ himself? Had they reached the condition of sinless beings? The assistant smiled good-humoredly and explained, "None of that. Despite all the esteem we owe them, we have to see them as vanguards of progress, but they are not infallible. They are noble souls in the blessed process of sublimation, creditors of our reverence due to the degree of spiritual advancement they have reached. However, they are still spirits attached to earthly humanity, amongst whom they will assume physical bodies once again in the future through the universal institution of reincarnation to carry out invaluable endeavors. But when compared to this assembly of tormented souls, are they luminaries exempt of error? No. We cannot expect them to have qualities possessed only by spirits who have reached absolute sublimation. They are high-ranking exponents of fraternity and higher knowledge, but they still harbor the natural potential to err. They excel in goodwill, learning, and personal sacrifice in their incessant assistance to incarnates, but they can still fall victim to errors. Even so, they are quick to correct them without the vanity that often afflicts the learned people of earth. For instance, there are several discarnate physicians among them. In spite of being excellent professionals, dedicated to the mission they have embraced, it would not be admissible that they would suddenly be promoted from the fragmentary medical knowledge of the world to complete wisdom. With their immersion in the realities of death, they have acquired new visions of life, expanding their horizons of observation. They understand that they do know something, but it is very little of what they ought to know. Consequently, they are devoting themselves to invaluable crusades of service in which they help and learn. Workers from other circles of human experience are in a similar situation. They help and are helped in turn. It could not be otherwise. We know that miracles do not exist as a derogation of the laws of nature. We are one another's brothers and sisters, evolving together in a process of interdependence where individual effort stands out. At this point of his explanation, Donna Ambrosina sat down beside the director of the session, a pleasant-looking gray-haired man who had set up the work table for 14 persons. He displayed simplicity and faith. While Gabriel stood beside the medium, applying longitudinal passes to prepare her for the evening's activities, the leader of the meeting said a heartfelt prayer. Next, an edifying text from a doctrinal book was read, followed by a brief evangelical message chosen by the meeting's director under Gabriel's influence. The main theme of the reading was patience. And truly, the assembly examined in its entirety displayed the afflictions of disquieting problems, demanding the key of conformance to reach re-equilibrium. Dozens of people crowded around the table, exhibiting tribulations and difficulties. Strange thought forms emerged from group to group, evidencing their mental positions. Here, darts of concern, daggers of bitterness, mists of tears. There, obsessors hardened in disappointment or despair amid aggressive purposes of vengeance, worsened by the fear of the unknown. Many of the discarnates longed for heaven, while others feared hell, maladjusted by the mistaken religious education they had received. Several spirit friends had begun helping the mediums presiding at the table to expand on the doctrinal message based on the evangelical topic of the evening by providing rightful comments, encouragement, and consolation. Cases were not addressed individually, although we clearly perceived that the messages were emitted with precise aims. Here, they uplifted a broken heart. There, they warned careless consciences. Yonder, they renewed forgiveness, faith, charity, and hope. There was no lack of gripping scenes of persecuting spirits trying to hypnotize their victims, inducing them to sleep so that they wouldn't hear the transforming messages. Although several other mediums were at work in the room, collaborating for the harmony of the services in general, we could see that Donna Ambrosina was the center of everyone's trust and the object of their attention. She was the heart of the sanctuary, giving and receiving, the living focus of the silent connection between the inhabitants of two distinct spheres. Several sheets of paper were placed next to her as she prayed. These were petitions, wishes, and appeals from the attendees, seeking help from the other side with their afflictions and difficulties. Each sheet was an agonized petition, a moving plea. A wide elastic band of bluish light could be seen between Donna Ambrosina and Gabriel, and spirit friends, ready in Christian solidarity, entered it. One by one they took the medium's arm, after influencing her cortical centers to respond as far as possible to the problems. Prior to beginning the task of responding to the questions, however, the spirit workers placed a large fluidic mirror next to the medium. On its face, with incredible rapidity, absent persons named in the petitions would appear in order to be examined by the benefactors, who from a distance would contemplate the image, pick up its thoughts, specify its needs, and offer a possible solution. While other knowledgeable workers of faith were teaching the path to inner peace under the inspiration of mentors from our plane, Donna Ambrosina tirelessly psychographed under the guidance of instructors who took turns in the assistance task. The work in the room had assumed a steady pace, which gave us the appropriate window to continue our questions. Ilaria was the first to ask about something we could not grasp. Glancing at the wide fluidic band that linked Donna Ambrosina to Gabriel, he asked, "What is the purpose of that band, in which the medium and the mentor are so closely associated to one another?" With his usual tolerance and benevolence, Alice explained, "The greater development of mediumistic faculties requires this measure. While listening and seeing within vibrations that transcend the ordinary sensorial field, Ambrosina cannot be left at the mercy of every request from the spirit realm, or she would lose her equilibrium. When through goodwill, study, and comprehension of their responsibilities, mediums show they are ready to work for the good, they receive closer support from an experienced and knowledgeable spirit who begins guiding their pilgrimage on earth and controlling their energies. In this case, Gabriel fully controls the energies of Ambrosina, who establishes contact with the spirit realm solely in conformance with his supervision. Does that mean that in order to establish a communication through her, we would have to tune into both her and Gabriel at the same time? Exactly. A mediumistic mandate requires order, security, and efficiency. A delegation of human authority involves concession of resources on the part of those who grant it. One cannot request regular cooperation from mediums without offering them the necessary guarantees. But doesn't that make the process of communication difficult? Not at all. In light of respectable and understandable needs showing prospects for real improvement, Gabriel has taken it upon himself to facilitate matters, helping the communicators as much as he aids the medium. Noticing the perfect communion between mentor and ward, I asked in turn if such an association might not be connected to commitments assumed by mediums prior to reincarnation. Oh yes, such work is not carried out without prior planning. Chance is a word of human invention to disguise least effort. Gabriel and Ambrosina planned their current work long before she enveloped herself in the dense fluids of physical life. So why say, I continued, remembering the assistant's own words, that when mediums distinguish themselves in their service to the good, they receive the support of a spirit friend, if that friend and the medium have been united for a long time? The instructor replied, in any commitment, it would not be right to lessen freedom of action. Ambrosina did commit herself, but that wouldn't keep her from backing out of her agreement, despite recognizing its excellence and magnitude. She could have followed another pathway to fulfill her dreams as a woman, even if it would have delayed the accomplishments without which she would not freely lift herself from the world. The guides of the spirit world seek collaborators, not slaves. The medium worthy of the mission of assistance is not a yoked animal, but a brother or sister of humankind as an aspirant of wisdom. Mediums should work and study out of love. That's why many start the journey and then retreat. Free to decide their own destiny, they often prefer to stagnate in the circle of undesirable company, yielding to terrible fascinations. They start out enthusiastically in the work of the good, but in many circumstances they heed the corrupt spirits that approach them when they let their guard down. Consequently, they stumble and give in to cupidity, idleness, destructive self-centeredness, or delinquent sexuality, and become puppets of the enemies of the light, who vampirize their energies and destroy their greatest potential. This has been the case down through time. Yes, I agreed. But wouldn't it be possible for the spirit mentors to take measures to put a stop to such abuses the moment they appear? Allah smiled and replied respectfully, each conscience progresses by its own volition, in spite of the many teachers on the path. We owe our defeat or victory to ourselves. Souls and collectivities acquire the experiences with which they redeem or elevate themselves through their own efforts. Human beings construct, destroy, and reconstruct destinies, just as humankind builds and destroys civilizations, seeking the best direction to respond to God's call. That is why heavy tribulations roam the world, infirmity and affliction, war and decadence, awakening souls to rightful discernment. Each person lives in the sphere of his or her own acquisitions or debts. Thus, we see millions of individuals on earth caught in the web of tormented mediumship, thousands processing noteworthy psychic potential, many trying to develop resources of such nature, but few obtaining a mediumistic mandate for the work of fraternity and light. And as we are now, sublimated mediumship is a service we must edify, even though this glorious acquisition may cost us many centuries. But even with a mediumistic mandate, could someone like Donna Ambrosina actually fail? Why not? Stressed the assistant. A mandate is a delegation of power obtained through moral credit, but it isn't a certificate of sanctification. With greater or lesser responsibilities, we mustn't forget our obligations concerning the divine law in order to consolidate our titles of worthiness in the life eternal. And with a meaningful tone of voice, Aulus added, let us recall the words of the Lord. Much will be asked of those who have received much. The conversation, in addition to the tasks performed at the meeting, had offered me plenty of material to think about. The assistant's invaluable remarks regarding mediumship compelled me to silence and reflection. The same was not true of my companion, however. Ilario was gazing at the fluidic mirror on which the benefactors from our plane gathered quick information for the questions posed, and asked Aulus for some clarification on the delicate, efficient device which, from time to time, displayed scenes with distressed or sickly persons. It's a type of television endowed with resources from our sphere. Does the mirror display the physical body or the soul itself? Asked Ilario, looking for particulars. The soul itself. By examining the perispirit, information and conclusions are lined up. Often, it's crucial to meticulously analyze certain cases presented to us. However, when we receive multiple appeals all at the same time, we utilize means to tend to them at distance. To do so, workers in our line of activity are sent to diverse regions, where they capture the images according to the requests addressed to us, synchronizing the emissions with this receiver. The television, which has begun to spread throughout the world, can offer a close idea of this service, although our transmissions are much simpler, exact, and instantaneous. My colleague thought for a few moments as if a serious problem had blossomed in his mind, and then asked, "What we are seeing suggests important considerations. Let's say that someone addresses a question to the mediumistic mandate that would entail a certain delay between request and response. Let's also say that the interested party who is far away discarnates and, as occurs on many occasions, remains as a spirit in a home or hospital bed, although already free of the physical body. In such a case, is the spirit benefactor's reply given as if it applied to the person while incarnate? That can happen in various circumstances, added the assistant, because our line of service is neither automatic nor miraculous. We act with a spirit of cooperation and goodwill. The success depends on our mutual assistance because one single part can't fix the problems of the entire machine. The workers that receive the information require the efficient concourse of those who transmit it. Many times, the sufferer is shown from a long distance to those who propose to help him or her, and because of the normally huge number of the afflicted they must assist, the Samaritans of fraternity cannot immediately tell if they are receiving information about an incarnate or discarnate, especially if they haven't had a large amount of experience. In certain situations, those in need require intensive assistance in a fraction of a minute. Thus, any inaccuracy of this kind is perfectly admissible. But wouldn't that disturb the service of faith? Asked Ilario. If we were the incarnates, wouldn't we see this as a useless response sent to a dead person? No, Ilario, we cannot state the issue in such terms. Those who sincerely seek faith find the reward of the clear and peaceful comprehension of things without any harm due to the superficial and apparent contradictions. The assistant thought for a moment and remarked, "But if the patients are examples of frivolous and bad faith, approaching the mediumistic work with the deliberate purpose of instigating disbelief and spiritual aridity, the results, when they do occur, will serve them as a just harvest for the thorns they have sown. They abuse the generosity and patience of spirit friends and end up harvesting denial and mental torment for themselves. Those who cast mud into a clean fountain cannot expect to draw pure water from it right afterward." Ilario was satisfied and became silent. While Donna Ambrosina and the others were fulfilling their edifying duties, 2 healing mediums started the service of magnetic passes to treat sick patients in a nearby room. In order to gather new knowledge, we turned our attention to them.